We're joined by North Carolina Republican Senator Thom Tillis. His state is among 6 recovering from Hurricane Helene, and he joins us from Charlotte. Senator, I am sorry for the losses that you have experienced. 116 dead. Your state hit the hardest here. What does North Carolina need?
We need increased attention. We need to continue to increase the surge of federal resources. I'm glad to see finally we're getting movement out of Fort Liberty and out of Kentucky with the 82nd Airborne, 101st. This is unlike anything that we've seen in this state. The scope of it is the size of the state of Massachusetts, and we need all hands on deck.
Senator, before the break, you were telling us that you had finally seen some movement from the 82nd Airborne. I know President Biden had approved 1,000 U.S. Army personnel to support the National Guard. What is happening as of today? Are those resources reaching who needs them?
They are beginning to move. I think they're moving a little bit more slowly than I'd hoped. That's why while we're working with the ground, I want to thank all the local, state, federal responders out there. They're doing extraordinary work. But we've got to plus up the resources out there into some of the hardest hit areas that we haven't even reached yet. And I, for one, think that can be done through the leadership of an active duty DOD personnel working with the state and with the National Guard. We just need to surge more resources. We've got to clear roads. Most roads you still have to assume are closed in western North Carolina. I've been out there twice this week. I'll be out there every day last week, every day this week. But just the basics of debris removal, rescue operations, things that the Department of Defense, the 82nd Airborne, the 101st are accustomed to doing in battle situations are exactly what we need in western North Carolina.
So you would prefer the military be in the lead and not FEMA? Is that right?
What I believe is that it has to be a coordinated response, and FEMA knows how to do this well. They've done it in other major disaster events. The American people and people in North Carolina need to understand the scope of this storm is more like Katrina. It may look like a flood to the outside observer, but again, this is a landmass roughly the size of the state of Massachusetts with damage distributed throughout. We have to get the maximum resources on the ground immediately to finish rescue operations and then sadly be there for recovery and rebuilding.
I noticed that a state senator in North Carolina named Kevin Corbin had been posting on Facebook asking people to stop conspiracy theory junk, as he called it, including claims the government's controlling the weather or stealing donation money. Who or what is fueling that kind of misinformation? And do you think it's harming recovery efforts?
Well, Margaret, I've been involved in a number of storm responses, and this is when I believe discipline is absolutely essential. Kevin is a friend of mine, and he's right to call out people. Many of these observations are not even from people on the ground. I believe that we have to stay focused on rescue operations, recovery operations, clearing operations, and we don't need any of these distractions on the ground. It's at the expense of hardworking first responders and people that are just trying to recover their lives. So I think they should listen to Kevin's advice and do the same. Look, if there are any challenges, call my office. We'll track them down if there are real issues. But quite honestly, most of what I've seen out there is a distraction and not helping the core of the effort right here, which is to save lives and start rebuilding.
Former President Trump claimed the federal response in North Carolina was terrible and emergency funding is being spent on immigrants. Do you know what he's talking about?
Well, here, let's stipulate
right?
the fact that I think that the president is right to say that billions of dollars is being spent as a result of Biden's failed immigration policies and border policies. However, we have the resources that we need. We're going to have to go back and pass more resources. We could have a discussion about the failure of this administration's border policies and the billions of dollars it's costing. But right now, not yet is it affecting the flow of resources to western North Carolina.
It is not a factor, to be clear. Okay.
Not at this time.
Okay. Homeland Security is projecting that FEMA can meet the immediate needs, but they're not sure if we can make it all the way through hurricane season without more federal help. You're asking for federal help, but the Speaker of the House has said he's not calling people back early to vote to approve it. Are you going to try to persuade him otherwise when he comes to North Carolina this week?
Well, I think we have to look at it because, Margaret, we've got a storm that's about to hit Florida that's going to have additional FEMA surge resource requests over the next week or so. I mean, we're talking about a major rain event that's forming down in the Gulf Coast. It's supposed to hit the 2/3 of the state of Florida. Other events could actually draw those funds down. I'm in the camp of let's go back. We already know that we need additional resources. Let's make sure that there's never a second, there's never attention drawn to whether or not they can move accounts around to respond to all these floods, not just in North Carolina, but the storm event. So I'm in the camp of let's go provide some certainty, then we can come back and do more after the election.
Well, that election is coming soon, and it's not the federal government that administers it, as you know. But we do know in your state there are some concerns that Helene could impact the ability of North Carolinians to either vote in person or via absentee ballot. What is the state doing at this point? Does there need to be more attention to that?
The state's doing a great job. I've spoken with Leader Berger and Speaker Moore and others in the legislature. They're coming back this week. They're taking lessons from Louisiana, a number of other states who have had to provide ballot access and voting access in difficult situations like this. They'll be passing legislative matters this week to address it. I think that North Carolina will be prepared to make sure that everybody who wants to vote will have access to the ballot and vote before Election Day or on Election Day.
All right, Senator, a developing story we'll continue to track.